Under arrest for suspicion of step murder. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence.
If there's any luck, you'll be too late. Can I get my coat?
Right, get the ambulance in, Pronto. We need CPR.
Don't. No, please don't.
Yeah, we need
I
the
should
ambulance
have
in.
stabbed him a bit more.
This was the moment that 66-year-old Penelope Jackson was arrested after stabbing her 78-year-old husband to death. As seen in police body cam footage, Penelope shows no remorse and appears to be elated at the thought of her husband dying. The attack resulted from an argument the couple had over what they were having for dinner. But surely, with an attack this callous and cold, there's more than meets the eye, right? Well, let's explore. Prior to the murder, Penelope and David had been married for nearly 25 years. But this wasn't either of their first marriage. Penelope had 3 previous marriages, all of which didn't work out for a number of reasons. Penelope married her first husband at the tender age of 18, and together they welcomed 2 children into their lives. But after just a few years, their love for one another diminished, and their relationship turned abusive, leading them to part ways through divorce. She met her second husband shortly after. He was an RAF serviceman, and on the surface, everything seemed to be going great. But after the two tied the knot, David came out as gay, and so the newlyweds swiftly divorced. Her third marriage proved to be a more successful union, at least for a while. At the time, Penelope held a position at the HR department at the Royal Air Force Base in South Wales, where she encountered Air Force engineer Alan Warrender. Although Alan was already married, the attraction between him and Penelope forged an unbreakable bond. Initially, they kept their affair completely concealed, but after Alan's wife passed away from an illness, they went public with their relationship. And before long, Penelope fell pregnant with their third child, Isabel. But despite a few years of happiness, their marriage would come to a tragic end. In 1993, upon returning from a business trip in the Middle East, Alan discovered that Penelope was cheating on him with another man. Overwhelmed by this heartbreaking revelation, he tragically chose to end his own life. Penelope's extramarital affair was with David Jackson, a lieutenant colonel in the army who was also married at the time. As their relationship deepened, David made the difficult decision to leave his wife, Sheila, to be with Penelope. This led to the duo tying the knot in 1996. In the years that ensued, the married couple, together with their daughter Isabel, relocated to France and subsequently to Germany due to David's military service. But despite the constant relocation, the tight-knit nature of their small family seemed resilient. However, it wasn't until 1998, after the devastating loss of David's only son, that the first signs of strain started to appear in their marriage. David struggled greatly with the loss of his son and began to channel his grief in unacceptable and sometimes violent ways. During one distressing incident, David pinned Penelope up against the wall so hard that her nose began to gush with blood. In another chilling episode, David shockingly held a knife to Penelope's throat during a family dinner, sending shivers through everyone present. The altercation became so serious that 3 family members had to intervene to prevent the situation from escalating. Thankfully, however, the violent outbursts would stop shortly after this incident. In the years that followed, David, Penelope, and Isabel moved back to England, where David and Penelope's marriage would stand the test of time for the next 2 decades. But in 2021, their marriage would come to a very abrupt end. On the evening of February 13th, 2021, Penelope and David were preparing to have a fancy steak dinner at home for Penelope's birthday. Isabella had bought Penelope and David some lobster, steak, and crab for dinner to celebrate the occasion. But due to the COVID pandemic and the lockdown measures in place in England, David and Penelope had to adapt their plans. Instead of having a physical gathering, they arranged a virtual family dinner over Zoom with Isabel and her husband. But the evening got off to a rocky start. As the Zoom call commenced, Penelope and David noticed that their iPad wasn't properly charged, and an argument broke out about whose fault it was for not charging it. Thankfully, tension simmered down after some small talk with Isabella and her husband, and the birthday dinner proceeded as planned. After finishing their starters of crab and lobster, Penelope returned to the kitchen to get the main course of steak and a side dish of bubble and squeak. Bubble and squeak is a British dish consisting of fried potato and cabbage blended into a patty. It's certainly not for everyone. And in contrast to the expensive steak, bubble and squeak is a very cheap side dish, which David seemed very opinionated about. David was adamant that serving such a low-class dish with such a high-end steak was sacrilege. The disagreement over this matter ignited a heated confrontation between David and Penelope, which resulted in the Zoom call ending prematurely. At the time, Isabella and her husband dismissed their argument as a trivial disagreement and assumed that Penelope and David would make up and enjoy the rest of their birthday together. But in reality, it was much darker. Concerned that David's verbal outburst might escalate into a physical altercation, Penelope grabbed a knife from the kitchen and fled to the bedroom, where she lay with the knife under her pillow. Penelope remained there for the rest of the evening. As the night neared its end, David made his way to bed, unaware of what awaited him. But upon entering the bedroom, he realized Penelope had something underneath her pillow. After she revealed what she was hiding, the night took a very sinister turn. According to Penelope, David asked her what on earth she was planning to do with the knife, to which she responded by saying that she was going to end her own life with the blade. But her husband doubted that she was being serious and was adamant that she was just being dramatic. After a back and forth, Penelope got out of bed and headed to the spare room, where the argument continued. Penelope claims that it was in the spare room where David began to goad her into stabbing him, calling her pathetic. In a fit of pure rage, she leashed out and sliced David's torso with the kitchen knife. David fell to his knees and watched her walk out of the bedroom as he clutched his chest. Penelope then grabbed a notepad and pen and began writing a confession. The confession note revealed that she had reached a breaking point, exhausted from enduring years of abuse. She acknowledged that her husband was a good father, but stated that his mask had slipped off tonight, and she could no longer handle it. At this point, David's stab wound wasn't life-threatening, and whilst Penelope was busy writing her confession, he grabbed the phone and called emergency services. During the 999 call, David can be heard telling Penelope that she wouldn't dare stab him again. She responded by stabbing him not once, but twice more until he was on the floor screaming. Penelope then nonchalantly picked up the phone and talked to the emergency services operator.
And are you with him now?
Well, I might just go and stab him again, but...
Alright, do not stab him again.
Why?
Okay, so just listen to my voice. Okay?
Yes.
Stay on the line with me.
I am complimented.
Okay, are you with the patient now?
Well, I'm in the lounge and he's in the kitchen bleeding to death with any luck.
Alright, so just stay on the line with me.
Look, this is not... You're not paid enough to do with this. It's not fair.
Okay, well, ultimately, madam, I'm listening to your voice, and you're the help I have available, so we need to help him, okay?
No, I'm not.
All right, madam,
I don't
how many times have you stabbed him?
I did the once,
You did the once?
and then he said I wouldn't do it again, so I did it twice more.
So, okay. So, in total, how many times?
3 times.
3 times, okay.
Once I thought I'd get his heart, well, he hasn't got one, and then twice in the abdomen.
The call continued for another 10 or so minutes as the operator tried to keep Penelope calm until the police arrived. When police arrived, they were met at the door by a very disassociated Penelope, who seemed especially calm despite the severity of what she had just done.
I stabbed him once because he's a... He's an aggressive bully and nasty, and I've had enough. And when he said you wouldn't do it, I did it twice more.
Throughout her interactions with law enforcement, Penelope didn't seem even slightly remorseful that she had just viciously attacked the man she had been married to for 24 years. In fact, she seemed more worried about her coat than her husband.
Go in the front, yeah. Grey wardrobe.
Okay, it might be a while, alright, but I'll try and get it. There's obviously a lot going on.
In the time that it took police to transport Penelope to the police station, David had died at the scene after multiple attempts to resuscitate him failed. As the police got Penelope out of the car at the station, they informed her of her husband's death and formally arrested her for the murder. Her reaction is interesting, to say the least.
I'm further arresting you for murder.
Oh, good.
I've already cautioned you,
Yes.
so your necessities for your arrest is for an prompt and effective investigation
Yeah.
and stop further harm.
Sorry, that one's a bit tight.
So,
This
Penny,
one's-
We're gonna
We're going to move them
Well,
to
the
the rear
rear
in a
in a
minute. The DO's just come out to check your temperature, and then we'll move you in. And then
mind
we'll
your
get
head. Alright,
I'm not
do you want her out?
exactly.
Yeah. Alright, step out, mind your head.
Yeah. Rightio. I'm very sorry for being a nuisance.
I've just got to take a temperature, okay?
Yeah. So that'd be just really great. Get COVID on the top of it.
The next day, Penelope was interviewed by police, but her answers were far less free-flowing than the previous night. It appeared that the gravity of her actions had finally sunk in, and she was no longer in a disassociated state. While she did not deny causing her husband's death, Penelope disputed the charge of murder. Instead, she claimed self-defense and asserted that she had been a victim of years of controlling behavior. Penelope's trial commenced in October 2021, and her defense maintained the stance that she was a victim of domestic abuse. Her defense argued that her husband had coercively controlled her, including preventing her from seeing friends and even deciding what she watched on TV. It was also highlighted by her legal representation that David had previously engaged in physical abusive behavior towards Penelope during their time in Germany. These instances were presented to support the argument that David had been the perpetrator of abuse within their relationship. These accounts were backed up by her daughter, Isabel. On the other hand, Jane Calverley, David's daughter from his first marriage, painted a very different story, claiming that Penelope seemed to enjoy baiting people. She stated that Penelope always felt everything had to revolve around her. She was a larger-than-life character and would enjoy making people feel uncomfortable. Following these statements from family members, the prosecution argued that Penelope appeared to be the aggressor in the situation, goading David and then showing absolutely zero remorse in any body cam footage after the fact. The prosecution also pointed out that Penelope refused to help David when the emergency handler asked her to do so, which they argued showed she had no desire to save his life. Penelope's fate pretty much rested on how sympathetic the jury would be towards her domestic violence claim, which was backed up by some evidence of physical violence, albeit from 20 years earlier. On the 27th of October 2021, after a 2.5-week trial and more than 10 hours of deliberations, the jury finally reached a verdict. The jury found Penelope guilty of the murder of David Jackson. She was subsequently sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 18 years, meaning she won't be eligible for release until she is in her mid-80s. Following her imprisonment, Penelope challenged her sentence at the Court of Appeals, but in June 2023, she lost her appeal, and the conviction was upheld. Do you think that Penelope got the sentence she deserved, or do you believe that it was potentially too harsh? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're here, check out our video on Richard Lee McNair, the convicted killer who escaped prison and convinced a police officer that he was just a jogger. Thank you for watching.